Hey everyone, Blind Spiral here with Chase. Finally getting to talk about him, how he's doing, how the rookie draft went from his perspective, how he's joined the league, and all other things. And we've got the preseason reveal. Chase, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a nice night. I'm excited to kind of get on here and prove to everyone that I am not an AI. Yeah, excited.
Um, let's just kind of get right into it, right? So Cam and Alan. There was like a I don't know if you watch It's Always Sunny or seen the meme of like Charlie like looking and pointing at different things on the screen. I feel like that
Yeah.
exists in our league or for our league in terms of who knows who. Um, but from what I understand, in real life Chase and Alan. Is that correct?
Yeah. I met Cam playing soccer in like
Or met Cam? Yeah, not
seventh
Chase. Sorry.
grade. Yeah, no, you're good. And Alan, I don't know when I met him, but around the same time, we were actually hanging out last weekend down at Cam's parents' place
Oh, nice.
in person. Yeah, they're good close friends. Yeah, known each other for a real long time. Playing a bunch of other leagues with them as well. Kind of our home redraft league is
Yeah.
the three of us and a few others. So, yeah.
So when this league started, and then you had the opportunity to join, did you hear anything about it beforehand? Did Cam and Alan just rope you into it? Kind of what did that process look like when the team became available?
Yeah, I was actually
Oh, that's
technically a
right. Yeah, you were a
co-owner with
co-owner with
Alan for the
Alan. Yeah,
first
yeah,
season.
yeah,
I didn't click on the sleeper tab once. I mean, I did not look at it. I wasn't really doing anything.
yeah.
It was all Alan. But they both mentioned that it was at the time they asked me if I wanted to join, and I was like, I'm in too many leagues. I can't do more.
Right.
Like it's already so much work. But just like I know enjoyed the first year of this league so much. Kind of just hearing through them that it was fun. When a spot opened up, I was like, okay, I'm interested. I like, fuck it, it'll be fine. Let's form
Right.
our league.
Yeah. Now, when you say it was Alan doing everything, do you think that's why the team ended in the bottom for the league? No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Shots fired at
Yeah.
Alan.
If it had succeeded, it would have been a
Yeah,
true co-ownership.
yeah,
But
yeah. Then
it
you
was
would have been
all
like,
Alan.
yeah, I was the one that was doing it the whole time. It was me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, well, welcome in officially. How has it been playing with two friends? Like, do you kind of know their strategies and what they're looking for? I mean, there was a lot of trading early on. Did you kind of use that to your advantage? Or is it just like any other league where you're just trying to make trades with whoever you can?
Yeah, it's a little like any other league. I mean, I certainly talk with them more than I talk with some of the people in here that I don't know as well.
Right.
Um, like I know, and I know kind of who they are, like what players they really like. Um, Earlier this offseason, Cameron was like really into Jamar Chase, had a little Jamar Chase phase. Like, oh, I have Jamar Chase, and I really don't need him.
Right.
Um, so kind of knowing that gave that a bit of a head start. But yeah, that's really it. It's kind of knowing also how they work to get how they are willing to work with me in trades. Kind of have like an established thing where we're both pretty calm and able to come to something
Yeah.
that's fair for both of us.
Reasonable traders as opposed to the guy who's like, I want two first for this running back, and you're like, dude, get the
Yeah,
fuck out of
yeah.
here.
Not
Um,
happening. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've always had good trade talks with Cam and Alan actually too. So yeah, I think everybody for the most part is a pretty reasonable trader in a league, which is nice. Um, when it comes to your strategy, so I talked a little bit about Rick with this, right? Because you kind of came in out with a bang, spending money
Yep.
to make money, and we'll talk about
Yep.
your. You can reveal the team name and we'll reveal the team logo here in a minute. But where did that strategy come from? Did you figure that out like, or did you just know right away? Is that something you figured out as you went? Did that come from inspiration from somewhere else? Like what? I mean, you again right out of the gate, spending money, trading it away. I'll hold on to this. Give me a first. Like, where'd that kind of come from?
Yeah. When I was into the team, I was looking around at the other teams and kind of where that team stacked up. And mine was really top heavy, so like Allen, Chase, CMC, and then it's pretty bad after that,
Yeah.
or it was pretty bad after that. So kind of just looking around at everyone else, I didn't think there was like a very good shot that team wins the league this year. And just because how those contracts were structured, I think moving into the future, if I hadn't sold then, I would have been really screwed. So after I looked at that, that's kind of when I made the decision, like, okay, I am just going to go all in on 2024, 2025. I don't think, I know that there are like kind of incentives for not being like what would traditionally be the 101 in other leagues. And I'm not so worried about that. Like, I think my team will be all right. Playoffs are lucky, so hopefully I can win a game in there,
Right,
and end up with a higher pick. I just didn't see any reason to be holding on to those huge contracts when my team wasn't going to win it. So I wanted to get what I could. I was a little pleasantly surprised with what I was able to get in return for a few of the players. And yeah, I think this year's going to suck, but I feel pretty good about where I'm headed 2024, 2025.
the more I think about it, the more I think you screwed me on the one deal we did where I sent you my 25 first for like a couple backups and some money. But
all the players.
yeah, but I mean, it was worth it to
Yeah.
have the handcuffs and the security for me, I think. So,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
you usually
So
this heavy?
you're all in this.
Oh yeah, yeah, completely
But
all
you're-
in. It's this year or
Yeah.
nothing.
You gotta go. Yeah.
Are you usually this heavy of a trader, or do you think it was more circumstance for you? Because I remember as soon as I finished the deal where I unloaded Diggs and was even in cap space next year, you literally messaged me, and I think I quote, "Hey, if you want to undo all the work you did, McCaffrey's available." Is this like a normal thing to expect from you, like this crazy amount of trading, or is this just kind of a getting your team the way you want it, you think?
Oh, yeah, good question. I'd say I'm generally pretty active, but this is probably a little more than I usually do, just because it's like a new team,
Right.
and it's like a complete change in direction for the team. I think it was a little more active than I typically am, but yeah, in general, that's the fun part of Dynasty to me, is kind of making those trades and talking to people, kind of figuring out what they want to do, how you
Yeah.
can work together. So,
And where it goes from there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your team name. I've got the logo here as well. So it is official now, your team name. Do you want to reveal for everybody playing along at home?
Yeah. We're gonna be the Liquidators. A little reference to kind of the work that I've been through so far. So I started off with the three big assets that are here no more. So a little shout out to them. The team name.
I love it. I'm also happy you like the logo. So a lot of them, like, I need to tweak a little bit or put a little bit more work into. This one was just change the colors around, and you were like, yeah, that's the one. We also have Rick's logo here too. So Rick's, until he decides on a team name, I made fairly generic logos for you and him. I showed you your generic one, which was ugly as sin.
Yeah.
So thank you for having a team name. I like Rick's a lot though. So here's Rick's. So Rick Duncan's team. I thought this was perfect after talking to him the other day as well. So we've got some logos for you guys, which just adds to the fun. Let's talk about, in the meantime, the state of your roster as we pull it up here on Sleeper, which, as you know, is wonderful to look at on the desktop, but it's still 10 times better now than how the app is, in my opinion. Lots of moves that you made, and there's still some really good pieces on your team, right? P. Ryan should have a bit of a role as Williams is coming back. Montgomery was paid starting running back money, and Detroit's offense is supposed to be the one. Tannehill, everybody's been doubting, but can still do it. Drake London, if I wasn't in a rebuild situation, definitely would have been holding on to him, and so he's a great piece. Michael Pittman's a good piece. Goddard's a good piece. Gets a little bit weird after that for the most part, but you still have some solid pieces on your team and some good depth. You were also around for a long time in the veteran draft, picking up rookies and pieces that you think could be potential holds or sells, maybe even one day. How are you overall with the state of your roster? Like, are you happy with where you're at? I know that obviously it's a rebuild, and that's why you've got those 4 firsts. The 5 or 6 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. You also got 225 firsts, 225 seconds, a bunch of thirds. Like, are you happy with where you are in terms of going into 2024? Do you think there's still more room to grow? Like, kind of where's your head at with the state of your roster right now?
Yeah. I'll also use this this is the first ad break of the stream. Sponsored by the Liquidators. We have a bunch of running backs available for cheap.
Okay. Perfect.
I can fulfill the contracts. Please, they're going to be wasted on my roster.
Right.
I mean, it's not a great roster. That's why this is a rebuild. But kind of my hope going into the season was to either get pieces that'll be here for a while. So that's probably London and Pittman. That's about it. Maybe Goddard. I don't know.
Right.
And then just a bunch of other things that could potentially be sellable this season. So, I paid a lot for Montgomery in the veteran draft and have a lot of handcuffs. So,
yeah.
If you want to get ahead of it now, I would be happy to sell them. But the other idea is, if I hold them through the season and the starter goes down, I don't really need them, and I'd be willing to sell them for a bit more draft capital. But the plan is to sell, a good chunk of the running backs that are here now.
I didn't realize how intense this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 running backs currently on your roster. Now, obviously, that includes the cuts that we have to do here. We lose 5 roster spots in a few days. Now, a little under 2 weeks. I will lose 5 more, but you do have the entire New England Patriots backfield. I remember that was part of the trade that we made. So you've got everybody but Ramondre. Damian Prince, who's looking good for Kansas City. Zeke is going to go somewhere one day. The Washington backfield's a mess. You've got Rodriguez, Gus Edwards, who could back up J.K. Dobbins, Keontae Ingram, Raheem Mostert. I mean, you've got a lot of pieces everywhere. Do you think you would take a discount to sell them earlier on before an injury happens? Or do you think you would hold out for a king's ransom if somebody else goes down? Or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I'm happy to do either. I mean, obviously the price goes up if J.K. Dobbins holdout lasts longer and someone wants Edwards. The price is going to go up as it gets closer, but I'm happy to do either. If people want to come to me now, and while the prices are relatively cheap, a lot of these people can be had for thirds. But as we get into the season, or if there is an ACL or whatever happens in football, I mean, they get more expensive then.
That makes sense.
Obviously, I'm not able to hold all of them. So, I think some of the time that because of roster cuts, so, the next few weeks are kind of going to be key in terms of selling who I'm able to sell, or kind of holding throughout camp when there are potentially injuries. But we'll see. I'm flexible.
So if you're if you're interested in some of these guys, I mean, obviously you wouldn't do it for Montgomery or Pirine probably, but if you're interested in some of these depth running backs for a 4th round pick that are on the chopping block to get it before somebody else has the potential to bid, they're available.
Yes, and one quick correction: Montgomery and Pirine are available.
I meant like for a 4th round pick. I don't think you would sell Montgomery for a 4th. Otherwise, we'll talk offline. But some of these so some of these other depth pieces might just be available that are towards the bottom of your roster. Might be available for like a super cheap pick. So call now. Call the Liquidators. 1-800-LIQUID right now.
I got to get my phone number posted up on
it. It's interesting. I've got Cam's phone number and Alan's phone number, and then obviously I know codes, so I've got like a decent bit of the league's phone numbers. I'm sure we'll get to that point eventually. All right, so the other part that I wanted to talk about that I think will be fun is I want to talk about our preseason rankings reveal that is officially done. So you are seeing this live. You have not seen anything yet. You don't know. You pulled up your rankings of what you did as well. And I think this is great, right? Because if I did the rankings myself, I'm biased. I like to think I've got the best team, right? Everybody voted for themselves first for the most part. And as much as I love you, I think that that your team's towards the bottom, and so you have a very fair opinion of what's towards the top. So the way it's going to work is this: we'll kind of this black box will move up slowly over time, and we'll look at we'll start from the bottom at 12th because it's always more fun to do it that way. Nine
Yeah.
different general managers voted on this, so 9 of the 12 of us voted. I think I blame Allen, Raggy, and I think I blame Webb Morgan. So basically, 3 of the 4 teams in the Jamarcus Russell division. I understand where Morgan's coming from, though. He's like, I don't have time to look, and he voted for himself for first, and that's it, and then moved on. But it'll show you what rank they came in overall, what the team name is, the team logo, and their average place as well. So we'll see how close some of these teams are. In my opinion, there are 4 different tiers that it got broken into. So let's kind of go through it.
Okay.
I need to pull up my cheat sheet here. This way I can know
I
what
did
I'm
it
about to talk
in 3
about too.
tiers.
Oh, you had 3 different tiers. Yes, I mean I'm
Yeah.
really exaggerating when I say 4 tiers. It really is 3 tiers, but there is a slight tier break with 4 and 5. So really, the bottom tier is like the bottom 8, maybe 9, 8 to 12, 9 to 12, and then there's like the middle, and then another middle, and then the top. So let's start at the top, and hopefully this shows up at a decent size on your screen for you and for everybody else watching at home. All right, number 12, not very many surprises here. We've got the Liquidators down here at number 12. There were a few teams, interestingly enough, that voted for you to come in a decent spot in the rankings. So if I pull it up, I got the ugly looking spreadsheet here. You receive votes for 12th, 12th, 11th, 12th, 12th, 10th, 9th, 11th, and 10th. So a little bit of discrepancy there, but overall, a lot of 12th place votes. You receive more 12th place votes than anybody else in the league with 4 of them, and end up with an 11.0 average. Now, as you can imagine, there were some people who kind of trolled their votes and kind of said, hey, I think this team is really this, and they're not that. So you got to take that into account, and also some division rivalries. Somebody voting for someone to be in 12th, even though they don't really think that way. But that is it. Do you disagree? Do you think your team's in 12th? I do. No offense. I think there's no way you're
Yeah.
not. But are you? Is this fair to you? Do you think?
I put myself 11th. I put myself 1 ahead of Rick's team, mostly because I think I have a second starting quarterback.
Okay, fair.
I think he has a couple, like Debo, better than anyone I have this year. But
Right.
I think just the points that I'll get from having 2 quarterbacks that are likely to start through most of the year is probably, in my mind, puts me slightly ahead. But I totally understand why I went 12th. My team's not good. It's definitely bottom tier.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. That's a fair point. I think 6-point passing touchdowns is something that's underrated or overlooked almost sometimes, really. So understand that, which leads us to our next one here. Number 11, Rick Duncan at 11 with 10.22. So pretty close to you in the voting, but not quite. He ended up receiving votes 10th, 11th, 9th, 9th, 11th, 9th, 11th, 10th, 12th. So the highest vote that he received was place in 9th place, the same as yours, but a little bit above. So this sounds like something you agree with as well, right? You and Rick at the bottom. It's interesting to me because I feel like Rick does have some players that could pop off and just carry a week. Like if you told me that Debo Samuel drops 40, I'm like, yeah, that I see it,
Makes
right?
sense.
Yeah, exactly. So it should be interesting to see kind of how it shapes up. We'll speed on over to number 9 here. Actually, number 10. I swear I know how to count. And we've got Rutro Raggy here at number 10, 9.88, so awfully close to Rick's team. Rutro Raggy votes were all over the place. 11, 10, 12, 10, 7, 8, 8, 12, 11. So people saying, hey, you're the worst. People saying you're the best of the worst. So a little bit of mixture. And look, I know you don't know these teams super duper duper well from just joining the league recently. But Raggy's made a lot of moves in the offseason, went from first place overall last year to now being voted 10th in the preseason. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually didn't know that it was like a regular season first place finish.
Regular season first place finish. You can contribute a lot of that to Mahomes' Kelsey stack. But ultimately, when you look at it in a black and white world, 13-3, or let me look at my rule book. Not the rule book. Let me look at the cap sheet that has all the specifics on it. Has a lot of the records for points scored currently. I mean, we're 1 year in, right?
Wow.
81% went 13-3 lifetime so far. 1 win, 1 loss in the playoffs. Ended up losing won the third place game. Won all 6 of his division games. So has the most wins. Nobody else got 13 last year. So started off super strong, but the question becomes, how's it going to look now after trading Mahomes and Kelsey away, getting Trey Lance and some other pieces in return, which looks like they might or might not shape out for him. And the league kind of voted on that pretty heavily. So close to Rick Duncan's team. But, I think when you downgrade from, and I mean, he got 3 first-round picks out of it, right? But ultimately, I think when you downgrade from Mahomes, Kelsey to a couple picks, Baker Mayfield and Trey Lance, it doesn't look like it's going to go too well, but you got 3 firsts out of it at the same time.
It's about as different as it gets.
Yeah, very much so.
These 3 teams here were the bottom tier for me. I had me, Rick, and Barbara Braggy in the very bottom.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's see if that trend continues. We'll move to team number 9, and we've got the Webster Tigers at 8.55. So this is when things start to get a little bit more spicy. And this, to me, is the break in the tiers from here. So if there were 4 tiers, this is where the break would be. If there are... Well, there's one more that's close, so like floats in between, but we'll talk about the Tigers first. Lots of rookies. I worry about their cap situation more than anything else. Morgan signed all of his rookies to 3-year deals, and he's going to have to cut some of them, so there's going to be some financial impacts to that. That's a lot of Trevor Lawrence and whoever else also suits up this week. It feels like when you look at his roster. And so that's kind of what puts him in 9th place.
Yeah, I put him at 8. I'm very into the Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley stack. I know QB2 is going to be quite the predicament.
Howell or Jones, it's a little scary.
Yeah. I like the top half of the starting roster, and then it gets kind of scary. Yeah. And he's like 2 injuries away from starting Puka Nacua each week, so that's not where you want to be.
Or 1 bye week away, right? However you want to say it.
Yeah.
The good news that I know that Morgan has is that he is a coach, and so he does see things maybe in a different view than we do, and he is super big on these kind of younger, undrafted, lower-tier players, and so if he can see things that maybe we can't necessarily, maybe he finds a couple times in the rough. I mean, if one of his so he had all 13 fourth-round picks. If 1 or 2 of those hit, he won. You know what I mean? And so he had all those shots at it. I'm sure, if you've got 18 dart throws, one of them's got to hit, right? Moving on to... go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, yeah. No, you're good. I think the way this league's set up, I think hitting on a 4th is a huge deal. You get them cheap for a couple years. I think that's massive.
I think it's $4 in year 1, $5 in year 2, $7 in year 3. I mean, if you hit that right, you're good. I mean, if they hold out, it turns into a different world. But I mean, damn, if you can start somebody even in your flex spot that cheap, that's a deal. Moving on to team number 8, we got the Diamond Dogs at 7.88, and so the Diamond Dogs really could flex to you say they're in this bottom tier, or you could say they flex to the tier above because they're kind of close. But the Diamond Dogs, another interesting team that ended the regular season super strong, that don't look as promising coming into this next year. The thing that's interesting with them is you have Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson, George Kittle.
Yeah.
And so you could argue Rashad White's kind of in that same group of, he could drop some points maybe, but he's also in the Tampa offense now, and there's no Brady. So it's like you've got that, and then there's not a whole bunch else going on. And so you kind of wonder how they're going to do in particular. Do you agree with them here at 8? Did you have them at 9 instead, or where did you have them at on your personal list?
Yep, I had them 9 flipped. I like the stars a little bit more. I'm more concerned with kind of the depth. This is another team that I think is 2 injuries away from starting someone that I barely know their name. So, with bye weeks and that's it's going to be inevitable at some point that someone way down here is starting, and I don't know that makes someone who's truly a scary team.
Yeah. Will be interesting to see what they do. I mean, they made they made some interesting moves. So they made some moves that looked like they were rebuilding, and then some moves that look like they're not. They do have a first. They do have 2 seconds. They do have 2 thirds. So they do have some draft capital. And the division's wide open, right? I mean, you obviously have my team, the implications there that look really strong, but ultimately, otherwise, the two other bottom teams are at the bottom, so they could push for a wild
Yeah,
card spot. Is in theory, there are at least 2 free wins against your team, potentially 3, maybe 4 against Rick. So, I mean, that's a huge leg up as well.
helps. It
Yeah,
helps.
it's not going to hurt, right? Moving into
As
seventh.
a
Oh, go ahead.
as a fan of an AFC South team, I understand what playing
Yeah,
in a shitty division can do. Yeah,
yeah.
propel
Uh,
you much farther in the playoffs than you're supposed to be.
Yeah. Highest vote. I should have done this, by the way. Highest vote for the Diamond Dogs was 4th place, by the way. Not sure who that came from because we don't know, right? It's all anonymous, but highest place for them is 4th place. For Rick, the highest place he was voted was 9th. Same with you. Highest vote for Rutro Raggy was 7th place. Highest place for the Webster Tigers was 6th place. Highest vote for the Diamond Dogs was 4th place. Moving on to our number 7 seed, and again, this is where Diamond Dogs, you could say, leans one way or another way in terms of if we wanted to break it into tiers. We've got Win Like Flynn at 6.22, very close. Highest place vote for Win Like Flynn was actually 2nd place. So maybe his own, not so sure. But Win Like Flynn's an interesting team. Early sellout last year, almost out of necessity being in that division, but really has a lot of good pieces that could put it together. Dak Prescott, Najee Harris, DeAndre Hopkins, Miles Sanders, Jerry Jeudy, Marquise Brown, Kyle Pitts, Brandon Ayuk, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr. You could tell me that team wins the league or competes for a playoff spot or makes it to the finals. Kenny Pickett, Will Levis, like I would believe it. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, but there's not as much star power on it as you'd like. 224 first, so we could see a midseason move from Flynn. How do you feel about this roster?
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of the opposite of the last two we talked about. Like fewer stars, but if someone's injured, it's someone that's decent that's going to be in there. Jarek McKinnon can do all right. Like Tyler Algier can get you through a little bit. So I to me it's a tiny tick above the last two we've talked about, but similar. Like it would be hard for me to see this team winning the league, but it's certainly possible. I mean, if Hopkins kind of returns to his old self, like it's a decently scary team, but
Yeah.
that's just not something I see as very likely.
Yeah, I think they can hold their own. Is I think it's probably the best way to say it, right? Like the line's not going to fall, so they're going to put up some points. Will they blow anybody away? We'll see, but they're not going to have any issues. Moving to the 6th seed,
right.
Awfully close. Dan Flash is at 6.11, so barely beating out Win Like Flynn. Dan Flashes, if we look at the votes that they got, they did receive a first place vote. I'm not a betting man, but I'm betting that it was Dan. In addition, they received a couple fifth place votes, couple 6th place votes. So kind of right there in the center. Dan Flashes, I mean, you talk about top heavy. Let's talk about top heavy.
Yeah.
Dan Flashes has all of the pieces for the starting roster, but not a single backup piece. I mean, other than Jordan Love, right? If you take Jordan Love out in the Superflex spot, there's not a single backup piece there that looks nice, except for maybe Alan Lazard. But if you ignore all of that and you look at the starting roster of Russell Wilson, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, Christian Kirk, Darren Waller, Kadarius Toney, I mean, there's nothing to not like there. I worry about the age with Russ and Henry and Waller and and Rodgers and Kupp. But ultimately, I mean, this could be a really big win now year for Dan, but he's in a tough financial spot as well with very, very little cap to play with too.
Yeah, I mean the top heavy, the top end pieces on this team are pretty crazy. For me, having 2 or at least 1 star quarterback is a must in this sort of thing, and I don't know if Rodgers would qualify for me. So that's what keeps them kind of. I had them in 6 as well. You should call me. You're missing a little bit of depth. Call me. I have that for you. I also have the contract space to pay for the running back. Like I can build a contract. So let me know. We can work out. You got some picks. I'll take them off your hands.
Dan has a 2024 4th, and he has all of his 25 and all of his 26 picks. Not that you want to probably be trading for 26, but all that stuff in the bank, unlike some of us degenerates who have traded their entire 2025 draft class away. I'm not naming names. Moving
Who would
on
do that?
to, yeah, who would do that this early? What idiot. Moving on to fifth, we've got Justin's Deli. So there's been a lot of debate, and that's another tier break, by the way, right? So now we're into
Yep.
tier two, really, for these next couple. Justin's Deli, there's been an argument about who should be the best team in the division, in the Jamarcus Russell division, and it's been a pretty open debate. Alan for Justin's Deli has said it's him. Dan has scoffed at that. I think the Tigers and Raggy would disagree, but it seems like the league agrees with them being towards the bottom. But Justin Deli does beat out Dan Flashes by a decent margin. Do you agree with that assessment? Do you think it should be different? It is a healthy 1.5 point difference between the two of them, which isn't a lot, but it is a lot at the exact same time.
Yeah, I agree. This right before Allen's team was another tier break for me. So I would say they're even separated by tiers. I think the running backs, receivers, tight ends roughly can go toe to toe with Dan, but Herbert and Fields is just another level of quarterback. And again, and 2 quarterback 6-point passing touchdowns. I think that's a huge deal. It gives you a lot of safety and a lot of upside as well. So yeah, I think it's pretty clearly the best team in the division to me. And I had Allen at 4th on my rankings.
So that moves us up to number 4 on the actual rankings, and that is the Cchhaassee Pandas, again, just very close behind 0.11. So 2 teams separated by 0.11. By the way, Justin's Deli, in terms of, I don't think I did this with Dan. I did this with Dan. So Justin's Deli, the highest vote that they received was second place out there. So second place, couple fourth places, lots of fifth places, 1, 2, 3, 4 fifth places, 2 sixth places. So they were highly regarded. Cchhaassee Pandas came in at 4 here. Highest place that they got on their votes was second, but there are 4 fourth places, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, a fifth. So a little bit of everywhere for the Cchhaassee Pandas. And this is kind of that second tier for me. There's the top 3, and then these 2, and then Dan Flashes win like Flynn. Diamond Dogs, you can float to that third tier with Dan and win like Flynn, or you can move into the bottom tier. But this is the end of that second tier to me with the Cchhaassee Pandas. Did you have them at 5th, is what I'm guessing here?
I did. Yep. I compared to consensus. I had 4 and 5 flipped.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's do this. What are your top 3? And then I'm just going to delete the thing that covers it, and we'll see how accurate yours are in comparison to the league's thoughts.
Yeah, at 3, I had the inaugural. 2, I had Brownout. And at 1, I have Implications. Yeah.
So just yeah, explain your reasoning. Go ahead, go for it.
Well, your team is part my team, so I feel a little bit of allegiance to my old players that have left for greener pastures. Let's see, I'd have to pull these up, but if I'm remembering right, it's it's Burrow, the Burrow Chase stack to me.
It should be
the best
huge.
stack you can have in Dynasty right now. And then as far as you being in first, it's Mahomes and Allen. Like, I don't care much what the rest is, what's going on with the rest of the team. Like, as long as they're not total scrubs, it's Mahomes and Allen.
Yeah. Personally, I put myself at 1, a bit of bias. I put Brown out at 2, and I put Inaugurals at 3 as well. But when we look at the actual rankings, drum roll, oh God, yes. Brownout comes in at first place with an average place of second place. The implications close behind at 2.22, and the inaugurals in at third. Brownout received 3 first place votes, 3 second place votes, and 3 third place votes to put them at an even 2. The implications received 1, 2, 3, 4 first place votes, 2 fourth place votes, 2 third place votes, and a second place vote. Dan, I changed your vote to originally what you said, because he put me at 12 after I told him he had to redo his votes. So I deleted that one and put it at 1 like he originally had it. The inaugurals received a second place vote, 4 third place votes, a fourth place vote, 2 first place votes, and a fifth place vote, which I feel like is disrespectful. But
Yeah.
this is how the standings ended up shaking out in the end. So Brown out at 1, implications at 2, inaugurals at 3. But I think it's very clear. It is very much every given Sunday for these teams, and it depends on who shows up. In terms of how the teams will perform, right? One injury immediately knocks these teams down a tier because right now these 3 teams are completely superstar loaded. Um, I think if you want to look at the future, Brownout and the inaugural still have their future ahead of them, whereas I don't. Um, so they've got that going for them. But it also depends on how you want to look at your team build, right? I agree with you. Mahomes, Allen, Kelsey, that's all I need.
Sure.
I've got the premiums at the premium positions, so I'm okay with that. But again, when you look at Brownout, there's so much depth there. I voted for Brownout second myself. There's so many different pieces of depth, and like his bench has players that would be starters on any other team. I think
Godwin, Dotson, Pierce.
Yep.
Yeah.
Would just go anywhere else and start there. Developmental and Michael Mayer. Joku should have a good year. Dotson should be good. There's a lot of pieces there. When you look at what the inaugurals have done as well, they took a lot of rookies that are currently in their starting lineup. With Gibbs, they have Richardson, who's the most fun player in fantasy and someone I'm sure you're very excited for as a Colts fan. The moves that he made in the startup draft just were not fair, I think is the best way to say it. And so they have the future ahead of them. But I think when you look at this year, I'm so focused on this year that 2024 and beyond don't matter. But Brownout does take the edge here. So it sounds like you do agree with these rankings a little bit, except for a flip of Brownout and the implications. But that's such a marginal difference there. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how close to consensus I ended up. I mean, I think there were a few teams that flipped with one right above or below them, but other than that, I think it's basically how I ranked it.
Yeah. Is there, if you had to pick, and we'll wrap this up because we're a little past 30 minutes, and as much as I love people's commitment to this league, I wonder how long a 40-minute video is to people's commitment. Are there any one team on here where you could say it wouldn't surprise me if this team at this place shifted way down, way up? Which one's the most wild card on this list if you had to pick one?
Interesting.
I know it's a curveball. I should have given you a preparation for that question so you could have a better answer, but I just thought of it on the fly here.
Yeah, I think it was a little higher on Webster Tigers than everyone else. I think I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I could be wrong, but I think there were a couple picks that I think if you wanted to make a move, that kind of the back end of the roster that we talked about being kind of missing good pieces. I think if you were to fill those out, that maybe that's one that's a little bit exciting. But it seems like teams have mostly just picked their direction for the year already. So it's hard for me to see too many people switching from between tiers. But that one I think is possible if you were to go out and buy, because I know my understanding is Morgan seems to be pounding the drum for his team, thinking he's gonna win. So
right.
If that's the direction he wants to take it seems like there's some buying to be done, and with the right purchases, I think it is a pretty decent team.
Yeah, and he does. I mean, so he has his entire 24 draft class plus a couple fourths, entire 25th draft class plus a couple fourths. Don't ever try to get those fourths from him, by the way, just fair warning. But he does have the pieces to move up, and if he does believe in his team and things do go well, he definitely could. I wonder if he tries to couple a first with Jones or Howell to move up in the quarterback department or something like that. Could be really interesting to see what he ends up doing. Especially since, to your point, he thinks he's in there. Whether he is or not, we'll see as it goes over time. It's why I love the format of starting against your division. I remember thinking myself last year, this was the year to win, and I made moves to compete and went 0-3 and was like, man, I don't know about this anymore. So, those first 3 weeks should be super telling for all teams. in terms of what the rest of their season might look like. So maybe that'll be the selling point. But also, if you go 0-3 and you start coming to sell, or you go 3-0 and you start buying, I mean, prices kind of increase a little bit more than you want them to. So you will have to keep an eye out and see how it goes. Any final thoughts that you have? Any shout outs or anything you want to talk about before we finish this up?
Only thing I wanted to bring up is if you were one of the teams that doesn't have the depth, I have a bunch of running backs. They're very cheap.
He has the depth.
Contracts filled. This is ad number 2. Ad break number 2. Please come talk to me. They're available. I'm easy to work with. It'll be great.
Perfect.
You can fix it right up. That's how you shoot up the rankings here.
I can vouch that you have been easy to work with, for the record too. For those of you wondering, like I said, there's been nobody that's difficult to trade with. There's one or two people that have very opposite views in terms of trading, and that's going to happen, right? But Chase has been easy to work with. Trade him, and then send me $1 in cap space for next year, and I'll approve the trade right away. All right, that'll do it for us. Appreciate you guys being part of the rank. Appreciate you, Chase, for being here for the rankings. We'll do something fun for the divisional rankings release as well. I would love to get Alan or Zoink Scoob on for that. I feel like having Zoink Scoob on to defend his name from the slander would be great. He was getting slandered all last year, even though he ended 13-3. Like, there's nothing he can do to defend his name, and so I'd love to have him on to defend it. But I also know that Alan is not going to be okay with coming in 5th place. He's going to take that personally too. So we'll have to do something with them soon. So have a great rest of your night. Appreciate your time, and we will talk to you guys soon.
You too. Nice hanging out with you.
Yeah, man. It was fun.